Welcome. This is what's happening on the sun today, the 30th of April 2011. It's nice to be back from holiday. Holidays are so exhausting and tiring. It's nice to get back to work where you can get some rest and relaxation. So what's been going on since I've been away? Alex Young has been keeping you well informed over the last few days, but let's take a look and see what's been happening to the sunspot regions. We have 4 regions going over the West Limb at the moment. 1195, which has been producing most of the activity that we've been seeing. 1196, 1199 and 1202 are all also approaching the West Limb and will disappear in the next day or two. Region 1200 near Disk Centre in the south is a group of small spots. Could develop into a new region, but we won't know for a day or two. Region 1203 on the northeast limb looks quite a promising region from an activity point of view. There's an unnumbered region near Disk Centre in the northern hemisphere that is comprised of a number of small spots. Whether it develops into a major region over the next few days, only time will tell. While I was away, the sun was fairly brain dead with just a C3 flare yesterday, but in the last 24 hours we've had 5 C flares. In fact, out of the corner of my eye, looking at the GOES plot, I see we have yet another fairly large C flare in progress at the moment. We've also had rather a beautiful coronal mass ejection off of the East Limb, which I'll show you later. So let's start our usual 360-degree tour of the sun with the Stereo Ahead spacecraft, which looks at the regions that have recently rotated off the disk or are about to. In these 2 repeats we can see all the activity going on in region 1195, which is visible from the Stereo A point of view in its southeast quadrant. To see what's happening on the hemisphere of the sun that is facing the Earth, we turn to the Solar Dynamics Observatory. First, in the white light and magnetic movies, there's a lot going on. But one thing that I thought was particularly interesting was in region 1202, which is just to the south and east of region 1199, near the West Limb. There, a new spot emerges and proceeds to rotate around the existing spot and indicates the potential for new activity. In the helium 304 and coronal movies, we can see that region 1195 is producing major activity, and there's a huge eruption off the southwest limb. I'm quite surprised that this didn't produce a coronal mass ejection, but none was visible in any of the coronagraph data. Last but not least, we turn to the Stereo Behind spacecraft that looks at regions that have just rotated onto the disk or are about to. In this sequence, I'd like you to particularly look in the southeast quadrant of the disk, where initially in the sequence there is a long dark line which is indicative of a filament channel. But later on, that filament channel closes up. That indicates that the filament lifted off, creating a coronal mass ejection, and that's the event that I talked about earlier. So putting all these views together into a composite coronal image, we can see that over the next few days we have a string of bright active regions in the northern hemisphere about to rotate onto the disk. In the meantime, the southern hemisphere looks rather quiet, and we're going to be losing our most active sunspot region, 1195, over the West Limb in the next day or two. So now let's take a look at that coronal mass ejection. Here we're going to use the Soho-Lascaux data. In the C2 coronagraph, we see the eruption off of the East Limb, and in the C3 you eventually see it poking its head just above the occulting disk towards the end of the sequence. The auroral zone looks a lot more active. That's probably due to the fact that we're in the high-speed solar wind stream that Alex mentioned yesterday. The KP index has accordingly been varying between 1 and 4, 4 being considered unsettled. So in summary then, the sunspot number is at 70, the X-ray background remains at about B3, the radio emissions from the sun are at 110 solar flux units, the solar wind speed is very high at 650 km per second, and the KP index has been varying between quiet and unsettled. So what's my forecast for the next 24 hours? I think we have a good chance of getting C flares. M flares are possible, but I think the chance of getting an X flare is quite low because I don't see explosive growth in any of these regions. We should carry on getting coronal mass ejections from time to time, but the chance of a major geomagnetic storm is low. Once again, thanks to Alex for filling in for me while I was away. If you want more detail, you should go to one of his websites, which are shown here on the screen, but are also in the description box below. If you want to see previous episodes of The Sun Today, those are also listed in the description box below, as are some of my videos on global warming. That's it for today. Keep safe. Bye for now.